Back in the saddle. Back in the saddle, ready to make this show great again. Just carry this thing, which I know you need me to. So,
funny thing is, the views are the highest in the last 2 videos as we've had in a very long time. So,
but the highest I was in the episode, without a doubt in my mind.
Yeah, it was my Georgia death race recap by far.
No, it wasn't.
No, it wasn't. It was the rucking one.
And then, string methods explained.
No, that's not the highest.
One of.
Nope.
On average, if it's gonna get views, gonna get listens, gonna get downloads, I'm in it. I'm an entertaining guy, Chris.
Let's just.
It's not my fault.
Georgia Death Race isn't the top one, but
special talents, good looks. I'm drinking a lot of milk right now. You know, it's like a thing.
So rucking tips is the most. This is going by like the Spotify stuff. Rucking tips is first. Case for aerobic base building is second.
Okay, I'm in them both of those.
Georgia Death Race recap is third.
In that.
Endurance training for longevity and performance.
In that one.
How to get the most out. Yeah, every single one of these. Well, no, until we get to like, then it's like the backstory one, which was just me.
Okay, well, there's one for you.
Okay. All right.
Do you know that's normal, typical for folks, and you probably know this, in central Pennsylvania to have milk as their drink with their dinner? Do you know that? Like a lot of folks grow up, you drink milk with dinner. Oh, you just lost your thing. Do you know that?
I mean, we didn't.
A lot of folks. Well, you're not from there. Your parents aren't from there.
No.
Yeah. I'm talking about people that are from there.
I don't know. I do know that we used to have a like a milk guy, like a delivery guy, and you had the metal boxes outside your house, and they would drop them in those boxes.
Dude, we used to run over the mountain to Myers Dairy all the time just to get milk.
Really?
Yeah. From Mifflin County.
Different times.
I mean, I don't know if it's different.
Not different there.
It's not different at all. People still do that. But this was 16 ounces of milk and 2 scoops of protein. Literally tastes like a milkshake.
Just vanilla protein powder.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really good. I'm happy with it.
I'm happy that you're happy.
It's like 500 calories right there. So I just wanted to share that with you.
This is the epic performance that you're bringing. All right.
Dude, I carry this thing. I challenged Chris, different kind of challenge this time, and I didn't wait for the podcast to do it, but I challenged Chris maybe 45 minutes ago that he has to produce at least one YouTube video per week for the rest of the year. We'll say for the rest of the year. Well, that'll be the challenge. Doesn't have to be a long form one. It can be a short, but he has to do. This motherfucker has more camera gear than a lot of professional camera content creators, and he just sits there and doesn't do a goddamn thing with it. And I'm tired of it. Personally, I'm tired of it. It offends me because I don't have all that.
I need to sell some camera gear. Yeah.
Well, either way, so Chris has to produce a YouTube video, one per week, for the rest of the year. So everyone be watching for that. Everyone watch for that, not be watching for that. And if you don't see it, give them shit.
Deal.
So there's that.
Chris Beyond Strength.
Crispy.
Chris Beyond Strength on Instagram. Or no, on I think that's what it is on
Crispy on Strength.
Is that what it is? It's where this podcast is posted on YouTube.
Crispy.
Which is
Crispy.
Yeah, at Chris Beyond Strength, all one word. Don't do a whole lot on there. Post this to it.
Well, it's going to change, isn't it?
There's a handful of shorts up there. There's definitely some stuff that I've posted to it, but it was.
You know what? I changed my mind.
You can't do that.
Shorts aren't good enough. It's got to be a YouTube. It doesn't have to be long, but it has to be like a YouTube video. I
already agreed.
No, we didn't shake. We'll shake right now. It has to be an actual YouTube video. A short does not count. All right, there we go. We shook on it. You all saw it. You heard it.
I break those things all the time.
That's what kind of guy Chris is. Now we've learned in many different ways. So, but I think that's probably all I wanted to get through today. So,
all right. You know what I've been doing a lot?
What?
And when I say a lot, like I mean in the last handful of days. Watching Mr. Ballin videos.
I've watched a handful of them.
Having them play. Dude, they're so good.
Yeah, he's good.
They're so good.
Dude, do you know how many people after listening to him on Modern Wisdom, like I went and told the stories that he told?
Yeah.
Like, you motherfuckers got to hear this shit.
Dude,
like, this is crazy. Yeah.
I had Jess listen to all three of the ones I can think of: the Lamp one, the Ted
The Lamp
Bundy,
one's fucked up.
the Ted Bundy one, and the Bee Stings one.
Can you imagine? I mean, the Bee Stings one is awesome, kind of
Yeah.
awesome. Crazy. It sucks that she suffered for that long. It sucks. It's like but here's the thing too: is like with a minimal amount of education, she could have avoided years of problems.
Well, yeah, doctors dropped the ball on that one.
Yeah. Like you had a bullseye shaped bite.
Yep.
It was a tick. You know, like
But by the time that was realized, it was too late.
yeah. And the same thing happened to Stephen Kotler.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's why.
Oh, yeah. And then
Stephen
he went-
Kotler almost killed himself because his
Yep.
Lyme's disease was so bad, and then he started surfing, and that's what somehow
Flow states.
flow states got him back. So
Dude needs to get stung by bees.
killer bees will do it. You're really walking a thin line with that one, but the lamp one, man, because that guy's still like it felt like real and years.
To this day, he's still in therapy.
It's fucking crazy, man. That would suck
insane.
so bad. What if you just wake up one day, you realize this is all bullshit?
Well, if I don't know how many of his videos you've gone into, but like just all of the ones that involve brain damage, completely changing a person and that person doing just wild stuff is insane. There's one that I watched that was an actor. You never watched Sons of Anarchy, did you?
no.
So there was I think his name was Half Sack. And he was
Already
character
like him. Already
character
like him.
on Sons of Anarchy, popular character. Like if you watch the show, even if the name you're like,
Camera's on me, by the way.
immediately recognized him once they started. But the video title, which is kind of hilarious because someone in the comments was like, all of that on your resume and you're still just known as Katy Perry's ex, because it was a very clickbaity title, which was this dude dated Katy Perry for a while. So it was just like the title was something to do with
I'm actually kind of jealous of that.
yeah.
I am.
Something to do with like well, whatever. The title had Katy Perry's ex in it. And but I don't want to like ruin the story for someone who wants to go listen to it, but the short of it is like he left Sons of Anarchy. He asked them to kill off his character because he felt like the show was too violent, and he was just like, I don't want to be involved in something with this much violence. It's the type of dude that he was. And so he asked them to kill off his character on the show so that he could go do other things. And then he went into like this other life and, you know, had a kid and all these things. And then one day he just took a motorcycle ride out into the desert to go clear his head, whatever, long motorcycle ride, got into an accident. Didn't seem that bad. He was transported to the hospital and was very quickly released. They said, like, you're all good, like outside of some like scrapes, bruises, whatever. But everyone that knew him immediately was like, he's not all good. Like, he's not making sense. He's speaking like irrationally and whatever. And it just spiraled and spiraled and spiraled. And I won't say like where it went.
Just fucking say it. Just say it. People can still go watch.
Well,
the
because
video.
I'd have to give more like of the like the short of it is like after he left Sons of Anarchy, there was a famous house. It was a writer's house. There was this woman who, I forget her name, but older woman who was known, like a lot of famous actors and actresses, when they make it, they thank her. They credit her with like being a part of their journey to getting to where they are. And she has this writing house. People go live with her, and it's just like a place where people go do creative work. I don't really know a ton about it beyond that. But so when he left the show, even though he had already made it, he was on one of the biggest TV shows. Someone had told him about it, and he was like, well, I kind of want to go there. And so when he hit the lady up, she was like, yeah, come on in. And so he went and he lived there for a while. But then as he was living there, that's when it wasn't planned. He found out, hey, look, you're having a kid. So he left to go be with this girl, and you know, their child is born, and he is just like all in on being a dad. But the relationship with the girl soured. They split. He moved back into his parents' house, and then it was there that he was kind of like trying to figure things out. And one day he went out for this motorcycle ride to clear his head, and that's when the accident happened. And so when he came back, there was just all kinds of things. He was just saying and doing all kinds of weird stuff. And he wound up one day being in his kitchen with his mom, and he was just in like pajamas, no shoes, nothing. He was like, I'm going for a walk. And he just walked out the door.
Pajamas and no shoes.
Like no shoes, like just walked out the door. And when he got out the door, he heard a woman screaming, like a blood curdling scream. And to him, it sounded like it was coming from the apartment, like right next to his parents' place or whatever. And so he went, he knocked on the door, no one was answering. And so I guess he busted the door in. Well, when he got in there, there's no one in there. And then the two guys that live there get home like soon after this, and they just find him standing there whenever they see their door or whatever, and told him to get out. And then he like freaked out on them. He grabbed a glass bottle, whatever, and like tried to hit both of them over the head. I think he did. And then they wound up like tackling him, beating him up, like restraining him, calling the cops, whatever. So he was arrested and charged with multiple, like breaking and entering, assault and battery, whatever, like all these different things. He's going through the court case, and like meanwhile, his parents are trying to get him to get brain scans, because even though they're saying like, oh, he's fine, and when he wound up going to jail. He was supposed to be there for I forget how long, and he was released relatively quickly. But one of the guards or someone in the jail or whatever was like, this dude clearly like he had a brain injury, like the way that he acts and things he says and does, and like, but for whatever reason, either they couldn't or whatever, but they like didn't actually go get him diagnosed. They just like made this like remark of like something's up with this dude. And so he was released early, I think due to overcrowding, which is I think that's what it was. When he was getting out, like it really messed him up. Even though he was only in there for like 6 weeks, it really messed him up. And when he was getting released, he said to, I guess, his dad, he was like, I want to get back into that, the writer's house. His dad was like, man, that's the last place he was, like when he seemed to kind of have his stuff together. Like, yeah, I think that's a great move. They contacted this lady, and she's like, yeah, come on in. And so he went back, and one day a neighbor of the writer's house is like doing stuff in their house, look out the front window, and they just see this guy, I think he was in jeans, no shirt, in the road in front of his house, just pacing back and forth, like sweaty, just like, and he's like, what in the world is going on? And next thing you know, he's like watching this, and the guy all of a sudden just makes a beeline for his front door and knocks on it. And I forget his name. I think it was John. And he knocks on the front door, and the guy's like, what in the world? He's looking through the peephole, and he just sees these bright blue eyes looking back at him through the peephole, even though you can't see in. He felt like this dude is just like piercing him, like right through the. And so he's like, what the heck? So he carefully opened the door just a little bit. And he's like, can I help you? And the guy's like, hi, I'm your new neighbor, John. Like, and so he opens the door more. He's like, oh, hi. Like, how's it going? And with that, the dude just turned around and walked away and went back to the writer's house. And he was like, whoa, like it was just like very intense. And a little while later, the guy's doing stuff in the house, and he hears his wife like blood curdling scream. And she's calling for him to like, hurry, hurry, hurry. And he goes, and and his wife is looking down towards their back, like patio or whatever. And so he goes and he looks, and the dude that just introduced himself to him at the front door is beating up. They have a painter doing some work on their house, and he has him down the ground, and he's beating him. And I think he had like something he was hitting him with, whatever. And he's like, oh my God. And he goes rushing down there and tells him to stop. And the dude is just unfazed, just continuing to attack this guy. And so he winds up, I don't remember if he shoved him or like punched him in the face or whatever. But basically, when he did it, the dude stopped, but just stared at him, like blank expression. And he wound up hitting him multiple times, like, and it kept escalating. Like he punched him in the face, punched him in the side of the head. He grabbed a chair and like smashed him over the head with it. And through all of it, the dude was just like blank, like, and I guess he was doing something that's why he was like still going after him. And so all they could do, since this dude was clearly like something was wrong, he wasn't even showing like any reaction to like pain, they helped the painter up. They sprinted back for the front of their house with this dude chasing behind them. They go in the front door, and right as they're about to slam it, dude shoves his arm through the door, and they slam the door on his arm. And now there are 3 people trying to shut the door, but there's an arm in it. And so they're like opening it, trying to push his arm out, and he's keeping it jammed in. And so finally they just start like timing it together, opening it, slam, open it, slam, like slamming his arm. And eventually like he like pulled back. And he I guess like went like jumped their fence, jumped this big wooden fence. They said he made it look so easy. Like he like just jumped over their fence like it was nothing. And then there was a high wooden fence and he just like vaulted it like it was nothing. They were just like, what is up with this dude? Back into the property of the writer's house. And so obviously they called 911, whatever. When the police came, they went into the writer's house and they found ultimately what he did after he went. They assume after he went and introduced himself to the neighbor and he went back in the writer's house, he went up to the lady that runs the house. He went up to her bedroom. She would have turned around, seen him shirtless, sweaty, looking agitated, and the type of person she was, she would have been like, John, is everything okay? Like, can I help you? And as she stood up, he just immediately attacked her. And he like bludgeoned her to death. He used like a hammer, all kinds of stuff. And then he did the same thing to her cat. And then he went over back to that house, was beating up the painter, and then kind of brings you up to speed with where it was. When he jumped the fence, he went back in the house and he went up. I don't know if it was, I guess they don't know exactly. He either went to the rooftop or he went to this higher like back balcony and fell to his death. And his death is ruled accidental. It's not ruled as suicide. I don't know how. And that's kind of, the video says like how this wasn't ruled as suicide, but somehow they determined it to be accidental. But yeah, and it's just crazy because this dude left a show because it
was too violent.
And then he has this brain injury and becomes like the most like deranged, violent individual. And there's another one like that he told, I won't do the whole story in this one, but of a guy who was totally normal. And you may have heard, like, I'm like, man, I feel like I heard this because they were thinking that he was on bath salts. There was a woman hanging out in her garage.
About bath salts,
yeah, right.
Man.
There was a woman hanging out in her garage, and he like erratically left a restaurant that he was at with his family and just like walked off, and they didn't know where he went. And he like went into town. He got into an argument with his dad, and he like just left, and he just started walking into like the town, and he saw this woman in her garage, and he was convinced that there was like these demons, and he was telling her like, you need to help me with the demons. Well, she was like freaked out by him, right?
Of course she was, yeah.
And then when she screamed, he was like, oh, she's a demon. And so he went and attacked her I don't remember exactly. I mean, he killed her, like, and then he started drinking. It was like something toxic. I forget what it was, some type of oil or something. He just started drinking from their garage. And then her husband came home from walking the dog. And then, then a neighbor overheard stuff, came over, and he attacked that neighbor, stabbed him a whole bunch of times. And that neighbor like ran away, like bleeding, called 911, thinking that the attacker was going to follow,
yeah.
But he didn't. I think that's when he finished off the woman. Then the woman's husband came home with a dog.
Oh my God.
And when the police got there, he was on top of her husband. And at first, like, they couldn't tell exactly what he was doing. And then they realized he was literally taking his hand, like fish hooking the guy, pulling his cheek, stretching it really long, and then biting huge chunks out of it, like eating it, swallowing it. So everyone assumed this, like, and
that's like bath salts behavior.
Almost the exact same behavior as the dude from Sons of Anarchy. The police were trying to they could not shoot because of the risk of hitting the guy that he was eating his face. And so literally like kicked him, like soccer kicked him in the head, and his head snapped back, and with like no change in expression, he just continued eating the guy's face. And he was like, whoa. And he did this over and over. And at one point, like the dude, he hit him so hard, like the dude fell backwards, immediately got back up. And he's not showing any aggression towards the police. He's just solely focused on eating this guy's face, and he's making like these animalistic noises. And
Jesus fucking Christ!
And so they wind up like finally like hitting him so hard, and then they're able to like restrain him. And he's telling them like, "Don't you see me? I'm eating this guy. Like I'm eating a human. Like kill me, all this stuff." And ultimately, like they finally get him. They arrest him. I mean, the dude that was stabbed lived, but the husband and the wife both died.
Jesus Christ.
But he ultimately, I think, went into a coma from the stuff he drank. But whenever it was, like whenever he came to, he had his details were fuzzy, but he was able to share like I saw these demons and I tried to recruit her to help me, but then I realized she was one. And so they're expecting like, when his toxicology report comes back, like
Drugs.
he's nothing. He had super, super, super low levels of THC. And so it was just brain damage from, I forget what it was that had happened to him. So it's like,
Terrifying.
brain damage is terrifying. Dude.
Yeah,
like that it can completely change someone. So, all right, that was way longer than I wanted to go on that.
That's fine, but
if you're listening to this and you haven't, like, and
That just makes me want to wear a helmet.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
just having something, because you don't need to watch them. Just some of them, there's like images. And
Mr.
stuff that
Ballins
you
are
like,
good. Mr. Ballins.
but you can just listen to them in the background while you're driving or whatever, and they're all true. They're all true. It's insane. So
Well, let's talk about running.
yeah, after that,
Let's talk about running. That's cool.
so yeah, you said let's talk about running workouts today. So do you have an idea of where you want to jump in?
Well, I think maybe I think all we really need to do is just define kind of different types and what their goals are,
Yep.
and maybe help people to understand a general progression that you might follow. Because and understanding that there are differences in how people respond to things, and so having the menu and then understanding how they might work is kind of my goal. Because I thought I was running this morning, and I'm sure as you do when you run, you have a lot of thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought back to, God, I don't know how long it's been since I really started running consistently again. But not long after I started running consistently again, I tried to do some hard running workouts. And by hard, I mean like intense pace and highish heart rate. It did not go well. I got hurt like immediately as soon as I did that. But within about
How?
my leg, remember I hurt my I was having tissue issues with my right leg and ankle.
Yep.
And didn't take long for that. And so, but then, Jesus Christ, look at you. And about the same time frame, right, from when you started running, because I started running after you. Again, full disclosure, I used to run a lot when I was younger, but when we started running again, about the same time frame, you hired a coach for your ultra prep, and then he immediately had you jump into VO2 max intervals.
I had like a week or two of kind of feeling out workouts, and then my first actual phase of training was VO2 max.
And you did fine. Like cumulatively, it started to get you, but like for the most part, you did fine.
First time I went fine.
So if I would have done that, I would have fucking destroyed me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so understanding that, well, first of all, I'm a lot heavier than you. So that has a lot to do with it. But people have different tissue tolerances. People adapt to things differently. And that's why, I think there's a general progression that's going to work for most people that might not. I know with some of the people, the resources that you brought with you, and that might not necessarily totally agree with that, but their menus are good. And so I figured it'd be good to talk about.
What do you mean?
Like the different types of running workouts that they have. And then talk about like, okay, so what is this one actually doing for you?
Yeah.
So those are my thoughts.
I mean, I think, I brought the book.
The book.
What is it even called?
Ultra running something.
Training Essentials for Ultra Running. So
By Chris
I always
Coop.
want to call I always want to say Chris Coop, but no, Chris Cooper is Two Brain Business.
Who's
Jason Coop.
Jason Coop, that's right.
And he has a company, and that's the company that I hired for my ultra marathon training.
Carmichael Training Systems.
Yeah, it's CST. Yeah, and I really think, and I'm going to bring this to like talking about running workouts, but I really think, you look at their stuff, and it's like you want to run like an ultra, you want to run a marathon, half marathon, you want to do triathlon, like those are like the different options. And I don't really think that there's anyone out there at the level that they are, at least. Of course, there's people that are like, oh yeah, we do like individualized hybrid athlete training, but I don't really think there's anyone doing like individualized hybrid athlete training. And so I think they just assume like you're a runner, right? So,
Sure.
So I filled out a questionnaire when I joined, and the questionnaire was very vague. It was like, how many hours a week are you currently training? well, I think in
They thought
hindsight,
running.
they're
Yeah.
just thinking running. But when I wrote down 6 hours, whatever it was at that time, 6 hours a week, they're right away like, oh, this dude's running 6 hours a week. So, number one, but there also was a discussion on the phone with the person that went on to be my coach where I did explain, like, hey, I'm not really running. I'm coming over from a strength conditioning background. But I think that there's like things that are said in a discussion and who knows what's retained. And then there's like this on paper, all right, this person's training 6 hours a week. And so I'm just given this, it's like you wouldn't want to combine, it doesn't matter. Let's just say this complete powerlifting program. It's not what I was doing, but I'm using this as an example. This complete powerlifting program, and just combine that with, say, you want to run a marathon, this complete marathon prep program. You can't just slap those two on top of each other.
Right.
You know what I mean? And that's absolutely not what I did, but there was just so much self-experimentation of, I'm like, holy crap, like look at all this volume that's being thrown at me. And then I spent however long, it was 8 months, figuring out this balance of like still lifting on top of that. And in hindsight, I think there should have been, I'll put it on me, better communication with my coach about that kind of stuff. But all that to say, I think looking at their stuff, it's made for like, you're just running only. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, it's all. I mean, and the thing is I've been reading that book just to read it, and I have no intentions of running an ultra marathon. But
Maybe you might do a mountain run. You said
it's not an ultra; it would be a half marathon, just in the mountains, which would be fun for me. So
and talk to Leanne, tell her to find you guys with 50K.
yeah, I don't think she'll be ready to do a 50K by then. So she's waiting. She's doing a 50K in September. But I mean, I like to read things and then take what I can and extrapolate them to different
There's great stuff in that book.
Absolutely. I think it's really good. And so, but it's for folks that are mostly just running. But
They talk about strength training in there, but it's like,
well, and here's the thing that in that entire realm, right? And it's gotten better in some, like uphill athletes gotten a little bit better, but like across the board in that kind of world, like if you look at the strength training prescriptions, they all fucking suck.
Yeah.
Like every one of them sucks.
Yep.
So, yeah, but so just looking at that and just, so I take a step back when I've been looking at these things and like thinking about general adaptations based on not just running, but like, you know, from an aerobic standpoint. And I think that's the one thing that we have to take into consideration is, are you doing specific prep for an event, or are you doing general development and running happens to be your tool?
Yep.
Right? Because these are different things and you're going to do different applications for those kind of things. And so I think just laying all of the context that we just laid is important for, you know, the rest of the things that we might talk about. So, because for me, it's like I run for general conditioning development. I'm not a running specific type of person, and by pretty much every account, my running volume is low.
Yeah.
You know, so this week so far, I've done.
it's Thursday for context.
It's Thursday. I've done 12 miles.
And how many workouts?
3. So I do 2 short runs on Monday, one on Monday, one on Wednesday, and I do right now on Tuesdays I do a lactate threshold intervals, and those took me 6 1/4 on Tuesday when it was all said.
6 1/4 miles.
Miles.
Okay.
Yeah. 6 1/4 miles. So with 3 10-minute lactate intervals and 3-minute break in between. But as soon as I got my goal with those, and this is kind of, we're getting ahead, but my goal with those is like as soon as I hit my heart rate, at the end of my interval, I'd slow down, get my heart rate down. But as soon as I get it to the top of what would be, you know, right in the middle of my zone 2, I start to run again and just try to maintain it there. So I'm still moving pretty good during my rest intervals. So, but I don't know where you want to start with. I mean,
Here's the big thing is we're coming at this with kind of why I set up that whole thing of, I don't think there's anyone out there really doing like an individualized approach to a hybrid athlete training. Like, oh, you want to, whether it's like general development or,
shit.
What?
I had something up I wanted to be able to talk about.
Whether it's general development or like specific prep, I don't know. I can think of like one maybe like group that you could potentially hire to be like, that's actually going to balance all that stuff. I think most would be like, all right, yeah, you know, whatever you're doing for strength training, like here's your running plan. But I still, so after the Georgia Death Race, I was training for the Mountain Masochist Trail Run. Like I've said the story on here a million times. I wound up getting sick, didn't get to do it. But my peak week before that, like I was in the absolute best shape of my life.
Hi, I'm Chris. I'm 37 and I'm in the best shape of my life.
I still used the exact same, like what they call their key running workouts. I still used everything I learned.
Oh, the workouts are good. It's sequencing. It's choosing sequencing that's going to matter.
And so it still was as simple as, because you can look, people be like, just 10 zillion options. Like you could do this, you could do this, you could do this, you could do this. And they simplified things down to their categories. Their key running workouts are recovery run, endurance run, steady state run, tempo run, and running intervals.
Right.
So a recovery run is an RPE 4 to 5, an endurance run is an RPE 5 to 6, steady state run RPE 7 to 8, tempo run RPE 8 to 9, running intervals RPE 9 to 10. Now I didn't use RPE, even though that's what they said. It was like, to really feel the difference between a RPE 4 to 5 and an RPE 5 to 6 is like, I don't know, for me at least, like that's pretty hard. Like I need a better...
It needs to be easier or harder.
Yeah, I need something to really track. It's so close together, and to me, they both kind of feel low enough that I'm like, what? So, but that would be a recovery run and endurance run. And I still think, looking back, especially getting ready for the Georgia Death Race, everything worked out. It went really well, but I probably ran too hard on my recovery runs. And one of the changes that I made was getting ready for the Mountain Masochist Trail Run is I didn't do any recovery runs. I did aerobic recovery circuits in the gym. So I just went like, if for me, and combining this with all the lifting that I was doing, was like, let's get off of our feet. Instead of doing recovery runs, let's get off our feet today. Let's still do some aerobic work, but like doing like the endurance circuits that we would do here in the gym, where I'd be mixing in like some cyclical activity with mobility and, but again, recovery run, endurance run, steady state run, tempo run, running intervals. Only thing that I would throw in that I used literally the only additional thing that I used was fast finish, easy runs.
Yeah.
So which easy run and endurance run, you can interchange those two names.
Yeah. So. I think like for most people, like you can live in the easy run, recovery run area for a very, very, very long time. And you likely should for a couple of reasons. First, you need the tissue tolerance to build up. Like if you go out and start trying to pound right away, your feet, your ankles, your lower legs, your hips, your back, like they're not going to be prepared for it. So the capacity of being on your feet and doing it for longer is going to build up and strengthen your tissues so that you're ready for it. I think the other thing to consider is that doing all of that helps you dial in your running form, like what's going to work for you, and also how you manage fatigue as you start to run. Because I think if you start running hard too quickly, your form, something about your gait is going to change that you're not prepared for it, and you're going to have issues. And I think that that's what I had when I started. I was like, oh, I'm ready to run hard, and I absolutely was not ready to run hard. Go ahead.
The one thing I'll say on that is teaching someone technique in the gym with a weight that's too light allows them to
cheat. Understand
just can actually move crappier, and then you hand them a little bit heavier weight, and it's like that weight can be corrective because it forces them to create some tension. I have experience, and I've heard other folks talk about this. The only thing you need to be careful with easy running all the time is the ground contact time is so long, can be so long, if you're not paying attention to your cadence.
Oh, you can, yeah.
So I totally agree with you, but after messing around with a whole bunch of stuff, and I've said this to you about, like, I would still run with a metronome, and it's like direct to what happened to me. Like when I did jack myself up, that was one of the things that Dr. Crane gave me that I was like immediate, like, oh my God, I jacked up my foot, and we've talked about in other episodes, we don't need to go in the whole backstory, but I was just thinking like, this is going to be forever on the recovery. And he was like, are you ever running with a metronome? I'm like, no, why would I do that? He's like, do you know what your cadence is? I'm like, I can pull it up in Garmin, whatever. And he was like, cool. He's like, I want you to go run and don't worry, like just go run and try and figure out what cadence you naturally run at. He's like, and then I just want you to add like 5 or 10 to that and see how your foot feels. And it was like gone. And then like I messed around with that a lot. I talked to you about that on speed workouts, like being like, okay, when I'm gonna do my intervals, I'm gonna be at this, I'm gonna dial back down. But I heard Chris Hinshaw talk about that on a podcast, and it was like, like there it is again. And that was one of the things he was saying with easy running is like, you still want to make sure that you're at a cadence that's going to transfer. If it's so slow that you're just like just your foot's on the ground forever.
You can run easy and still have a good cadence.
100%.
You can
100%.
Yeah.
But I'm saying it's something to be aware of.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons. One of the things that I do that I really like a lot. I used these workouts a ton over the past year or so. Is run walk intervals that are 30-30, and so it allows you can move it like that easy run pace. You can get a pretty decent cadence going while you're running. And so then that way you can manage your heart rate and move at a cadence that allows you to keep your from your ground contact time down. And instead of doing like a 1-4, which I think a lot of people, 1 minute run, 4 minute walk, a lot of people that when they're very starting, they should start like that. But like if you have some experience, like a 30-30, not like sprinting during the 30 seconds, but like at a good, I don't know, around 4 RPE pace. And for me, that keeps my heart rate, doing those right now keeps my heart rate in zone 1 or under. And I found that that's a really good way to maintain a fast cadence and get easy work in.
Yeah.
So
that's one of the few videos that I did. I did it as a short. But you could pay attention to RPE. You could pay attention to heart rate. You could pay attention to, like, you could use the talk test, but you shouldn't mix things. And where I was saying, like, they say, RPE 4 to 5, 5 to 6. I found that on easier runs, heart rate was a better guide for me.
yeah, I think perception matters a ton because it's like, it's just interesting. I think it can be, so for me, because I just did intervals. So the last interval workout I did, I try to think about the exposure, frequency exposure, length of exposure when it comes to conditioning workouts. And so I know, you and I have had the discussion that you think Joel Jamieson's lactate threshold work is probably too short. And there's part of me that agrees with you, but I think that it's a good step up for exposure for higher heart rate work.
Yeah.
And so I was running my lactate threshold intervals at a sub 6 minute pace, which is probably, that's like for where my heart rate needed to be. It was where it needed, like that's how hard I had to run, but it was a short interval. But then you look at yesterday or Tuesday, it took a little longer, but like I was running at a 7:40 pace and my heart rate was there.
So how long were you doing that sub 6 minute pace?
Oh, it was like the intervals were 2 to 3 minutes. So somewhere in there.
So
yeah.
even by this,
Yeah.
which they, in this book, they don't say VO2 max, but running intervals,
Yeah.
RP 9 to 10, 1 to 3.
But that's what I'm getting to.
Minutes.
That's what I'm getting to is like, that was not a 9. It didn't feel like a 9. It felt like this is a solid 7 to 8. So
you're saying that you could hold a 5 minute mile for those same.
I think I could get close.
Yeah.
I can run pretty hard right now, but maybe I'll prove myself wrong because, next month I do VO2 max intervals. So we'll see what happens when I do that. But it to me felt like an 8.
Yeah.
So it's like, I think you have to look at your heart rate too and think about like, well, what heart rate zones do I need to be in for me to get what I need to out of this workout, right? Because if, for example, if you're doing what they would call a tempo run, which the goal of a tempo run is to push your lactate threshold.
I was gonna say tempo and I think the last episode, I was like, what are they? I'm like, I forget what order. It's because they're the same thing. So like how they say running intervals, VO2 max.
Right.
They say tempo can be interchanged with threshold, and it can mean a lot of things.
Right. So essentially, you're looking at a lactate threshold run. Yep. And so you don't want your heart rate to be too high for that. Because first of all, you're not going to be able to sustain the effort. And for two, you want to be around lactate threshold because you're working on dealing with lactate buildup and clearing it and being efficient with doing that. So you need to be within a relatively right around the heart rate range you need to be in. So for me, I think being able to like look at like RPE and cross it with your heart rate, I think that you need to do both of those things and gain that understanding, you know?
Yeah.
Because then also, like, if you go out and you start to run and you're like, man, this feels like an RPE 6 and my fucking heart rate is 173, you know what I mean? Like, something's up. Like, there's something that you need to pay attention to.
Yeah.
So, but I don't know. I guess we could, like, kind of break those down then, right? So,
yeah. So, let me say this.
Let me say this.
And what we're doing with standing up all the kind of, I didn't call it this. It's just as we're messing around with it, I'm like, oh, it should be kind of like hybrid athlete level 1, hybrid athlete level 2, like the way that we set it up at the gym this month. But for both groups, it's like this is a general program. So it's going out to tons of people. And the way that I wrote it was like, if you are, because there's the option on there for 4 days a week of potentially running. But the way that I wrote it was, if you're not currently running, you're just getting into running, I would start with just one of these workouts. I would do all of them, but I would not be afraid to mix in the bike or the rower. Sure. And one way that you could progress this, because there's no progression in the level 1 of time or intensity. It's just flat in this first phase. On Monday and Wednesday they're the same. It's slightly longer on Saturdays. And the reason is because I'm like, you could just add, more. So you could run walk interval. You could build up to more time running than walking. That's one way you could progress it. You could do 1 day a week of run walk intervals or running if you're good for it, and build it up to adding in more. Right. So, but I don't. I just want to be clear that I don't think if you want to get into this stuff that you need to jump into running 4+ days a week. I mean, the way that I did it with my coach was 6 days a week of running. And in hindsight, I would have never done that.
I mean, right now I'm mostly running 3 and sometimes 4, but usually on the fourth conditioning day, I have like a 90-minute conditioning day. Yep. And when we were getting ready to run the half marathon, it was all running. But now, like, a lot of times I'll go out and I'll hike. Yep. And I'll try to hike fast, but I'll hike. But thinking about, like, we'll talk more about the specific workouts in a minute, but thinking about, for me, for a sequencing perspective, and thinking about most people. So, in those resources that we've used to kind of figure out some of the running workouts that we use, we're talking, the book is written to people that typically have 4 or more years of running experience. Mm-hmm. And so you have to think about what kind of adaptations these people have. For the most part, they might have some maladaptive adaptations because they run like shit, or because they've just beat the piss out of themselves. But like, they have the tissue tolerance in their lower legs, so they can handle that. They can probably deal with the blood pressure changes that come with the plyometric movements, right? And all of those kind of things. They probably have decent central, like, cardiac adaptations. So for me, like, looking for most people, and even for, like, and we've talked about this in different forms, but the fitter, there's 2 things I want to say. There's 3 things I want to say, and I'll put this all together, I swear to God. The fitter that you are, the bigger the hole you can dig yourself, right? So if you're very fit and you go out and you train hard, you can tap into resources that other people can't, and you can make it so that you really need a lot of recovery from what you've done because you can just work harder. So that's one thing to keep in mind. To layer on top of that, the best endurance athletes in the world do the bulk of their conditioning in zone 1 throughout the year. So think about that. These guys are the best. Now, granted, their training volumes are gargantuan compared to ours, but nonetheless, it's maybe not a total exact scale down, but it scales to us too. So you need to do a lot of that work because, first of all, it maintains your aerobic capacity. It gives you the ability to train more frequently because it doesn't tax you too much. And I think that's one of the things when it comes to really developing your conditioning is consistency and frequency is pretty important. So if you're going out and doing workouts that limit your frequency and your consistency, that's going to be an issue. And so you need that to develop yourself, but also you can't, you won't beat the piss out of yourself by doing that. So just considering that, like, the best people in the world do a ton of zone 1 work, most of their conditioning in zone 1 throughout the year. And then on top of that, for regular people, we have to think about, well, what else do we need that we might not develop? And one of the things that I think people do when they train too hard is, like I said, or train inappropriately hard. God, I closed it out again. Is maladaptive things happen. And it's like, I know I poo-poo on CrossFit all the time, but it's like one of the fucking reasons that I hate CrossFit is because, like, it sets people up for a lot of poor adaptations, like both from a movement standpoint, from a tissue tolerance standpoint, from a conditioning standpoint. But when you look at really developing conditioning, you have to think about, I start thinking central first. So I start thinking about, well, what do you need from the heart? And that's why I think most people, like, they don't do enough cardiac output work because, and this is something that I learned from one of my mentors, Bill Hartman, is a lot of people think about the heart as a pump, but it's not. It's like a hydraulic, what he called a hydraulic ram. So it deals with the return of blood more than it is active pushing it out. So think about, it's akin to dealing with like the fluid pressures of breathing, right? When you go through some kind of breathing education, you learn that it's mostly about getting all of the air out. So the hydraulic pump can work well to suck the air in. The heart works the same way. So it's being able to deal with the return of blood so that gets the blood pulled back out of the heart. It's not so much about the heart pumping the blood out, it's dealing with the return. And if you don't set yourself up to be able to deal with the return, so for example, if you do workouts that are too difficult too fast and you don't have the adaptations, what happens is you start to stiffen your cardiac muscle and you actually thicken the walls of your heart in the wrong way. So what we want is left ventricular eccentric hypertrophy, which makes it stretch more. What a lot of people end up with is they thicken and harden the walls of their heart because they train too hard and too fast.
Which is concentric hypertrophy.
Concentric hypertrophy. And a lot of that is when you have like glycolytic stress on the heart. That's what happens. And what happens, where do you get a lot of that glycolytic stress? When you run too fucking hard too fast, or when you condition too hard too fast, when you don't have some of these other cardiac adaptations taken care of. And so
even the too intensive weightlifting, right?
Exactly right.
Yeah.
So like that's one of the things that happens to powerlifters' hearts. They get very thick walls, and that's why you see a lot of those guys. Of course, their steroid abuse doesn't help, but like they have very thick cardiac walls, and so that's why they lend themselves to heart attacks and things like that. And so you have to think about like the blood returns to the heart, the left ventricle spins it and sends it back out. And so that's what we want to create the best condition for that to do. And so we have to sequence things in such a way that we limit our exposures, we grade the exposures, and then we increase them so that our heart adapts in the right way. And so when I think about these type of running workouts, like my mind goes there first. So for me, like if someone said, well, and this isn't optimal for specific training, and it's not totally optimal for full energy system development. But if someone came to me and said, you know, I'm going to lift weights and I'm going to do easy runs, and that's what I'm going to do for like all the time, I'd be like, that's probably a pretty good idea.
Yeah.
You know, whereas people go out and they start running too hard. And so think about that. If you're running at too intensive a pace and you're lifting, like you're feeding that problem, right? So first of all, you won't get out of your heart what you need to sustain your endurance, but also you're setting yourself up for potential issues by not training your cardiac muscle the way that you need to train it.
So let's define, I know Joel will say, I believe he would still say, you need to be under 150 to allow enough time for stretch of the left ventricle.
He says under 150.
Under 150 for the stretch of the left ventricle to have the eccentric, left ventricular eccentric hypertrophy.
Yeah, and depending on who, like, depending on
I don't know if he said. I don't. Go ahead.
he says under 150. I think you can, depending on your fitness level, you can get that with heart rates like as low as 100.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
But I'm saying the upper limit
is like 150.
Yeah.
Is what people say. I don't know if that's changed, but typically 100 to 150 is that range. But you, to be safer, to think about the other things that we want to develop, you would put it at the upper level of your zone 2, which for most people is not going to be 150.
Yeah.
You know, so for most people,
We're going to find out soon.
we will. Depending on what you're doing, depending on if you're
Yes.
seated or standing or what you're doing. But so that's why for me, doing the easy runs for as long as like you could do those for the rest of your life for most people. If you don't have any specific thing you want to do and you're not like I want to develop all of my energy systems to the degree that I possibly can. Easy runs and lifting weights are going to be a great place to be. Because the thing is like, man, if you consistently do run walk intervals, easy runs, recovery runs, and it's going to take time and it's going to take consistency and it's going to take frequency, like you'll be amazed at how fast you can actually run and keep your heart rate down. So
Yeah.
that was my soapbox for today. We can talk about the other things now. So
I mean, I don't know where you want to go with the other
well, just
things.
define the other workouts. So like a steady state, let's talk about a steady state running workout.
So, how do you want to go into that? I mean,
I guess where like it's at a 7 to 8 RPE is what
Yeah.
it's supposed to be. But for me, that's like a zone 3 run. Like you want to be
Yeah.
in the middle to the top of your zone 3.
Yeah.
Is really what it is.
so the way that I would use steady states. So in here they're saying 20 to 60 minutes per interval, and then you would have recoveries. So like the way that I would use them, and I use them a lot in the train up for both, but like the way that my coach applied them when I was getting ready for Georgia Death Race is we just had a steady state phase. And I would love to sit here and be like, this is why I did it. But I experimented. That's really all it was. I just experimented with the second time. Once I introduced them, I never removed them. Except for during recovery weeks. So every fourth week I didn't have any. But all of my working weeks after I introduced them, which was, I think, 6, 7, 9, 10, probably week 11. Every Monday I would go like 15 minutes easy. And then I would go, I think I did 2 by 30, and then
that wasn't your first week.
What's that? 2 by 20.
It was 2 by 20, 2 by 25, 2 by 30, 1 by 40.
Okay, yeah.
I know because I used that word.
Yeah, so it's been a while since I've done it, but and then you would go easy afterwards. Like you would finish off like easy cool down. So yeah, I would do those on Mondays. And then I would go recovery, like you could do recovery run. I would do like the aerobic recovery circuits, but that's where I used the steady state runs myself.
And for those, that's going to be like right at the edge of your cardiac output.
It should still feel pretty easy.
Yeah, it's going to be right at the edge of your cardiac output, so it can help maximize that, and then the recovery for that, which is like from a sequencing standpoint, for me, makes sense to do that, then do lactate threshold intervals. Right, because you've built the duration and the capacity to handle that kind of a heart rate, and then when you're taking it up to a lactate threshold, which is going to take you to the top of your zone 3, bottom of your zone 4, you can handle the venous return, and then also you're getting the aerobic power from the peripheral stuff of like your enzymatic activity in your mitochondria and the balance between your fast twitch and your slow twitch muscles doing work, and then being able to buffer like quote unquote buffer lactate, recycle it, use it, and make sure that you can maintain your rate of work. And so to me, sequencing in that way makes the most sense. I don't know that everybody would agree with that or they would even agree with that, but it's like doing steady states, lactate threshold, then VO2 max makes the most sense to me.
Yeah. I just realized camera's on me the whole time. I had to go change it.
It's all good.
So you just get to look at me going, huh. I don't know.
sounded like Forrest Gump right there.
I don't know what they would say like to what you just said, but what I can tell you, and you probably know from reading the book, is they're just like least specific to most specific.
And I get that. Totally understand.
And so you look at the way that they organize,
But
all
they're
of my
developing
training.
something specific.
Yes.
So think about it this way. Okay, so let's say you have a person for a year, right? And let's say 18 months.
Okay.
All right. So for the first 12, let's say they're mostly doing zone 1, zone 2 runs. So we'll call those recovery runs and easy runs. Okay. That gets them to the point where, okay, we introduce some steady state running. We do a train up for 6 months of, we introduce steady state runs. We introduce lactate threshold, and we introduce VO2 max. So throughout those 18 months, they have the adaptations that they need to then turn around and go from least specific to most specific, where you can put that intensity at the front end of the train up and then move on. But I think that's where...
You wouldn't put a beginner in
right.
that.
So for most people, like the sequencing, you're not going to be able to start with the sequencing that they would use for an ultra runner and go like VO2 max, intense shit, and then walk it down. You're going to fucking destroy someone, you know? So
For sure. I don't know if I have more to add to that.
But yeah, that was just a thought that I had about that. I think the thing is figuring out how you can handle what kind of volume you can handle and how you can handle it.
Yeah.
Too. Especially if you're heavy. You're a heavier person. Like, and I mean like me, like I'm heavy. So for a runner, I'm heavy.
I would need to reread it, but I can tell you that in this other book, The Science of Running by Steve Magnus, he distinguishes, he has you go through testing to distinguish if you were more fast twitch or more slow twitch. And
I'm 1,000,000% fast twitch. But.
And then he would, like, he doesn't do like the blanket, like, you know, you should do X percentage of your running should be easy, blah, blah, blah. Like he'll have you do testing to see if you're more, and I don't know if he would do this today. This book is old. I know that I've heard him say that
he's changed it.
There's things in that book that he does differently today and he would rewrite. Sure. So who knows, maybe that's one of them, but at least in that book, there's testing to help you distinguish if you're more fast twitch or slow twitch. And then he would, do your exposures to like intensity differently between those two camps. So
yeah, I think what we could talk about is just for general development using running workouts.
Yeah.
And so I think that what we kind of talked about there with a bunch of zone 1 and zone 2 work, easy runs, and then layering on your steady state runs, and then layering on your lactate threshold runs, and then layering on your VO2 max runs.
Yep.
And then that gives you the base to specifically do whatever you might want to do. And then looking at what you might have to do where it's like, well, I'm going to do a mountain run. Well, you need to be able to deal with uphills. You need to be able to manage the intervals of those heart rates. And you're going to need to be able to use the power of your aerobic system on those uphills. Yeah. It's not going to be the same as running a marathon, but you still need access to it. It's like, so what kind of workouts are going to give me that while I maintain some of these other things that I need to maintain, you know?
Yep.
But I think the sequencing first to develop yourself, I sincerely like, man, you know, I don't, if you talk to me, I don't know how many years ago, but let's say a handful of years ago, and you said, you know, if you said, Todd, would you say that running is the best thing for you to do to develop your aerobic system? I would say no. And it was because I don't like running, but it is.
Yeah,
it is. It's the best tool. If you can do it, you should do it.
So let's go back. We're saying about, that's the order of sequencing.
That's what I would do.
Well, yeah, and I agree.
Yeah.
One thing I want to be clear about is that we don't go from like recovery and easy runs and then just stop doing those. And I know that's not what you're saying, but like I don't want someone to listen and think that. And then we just start doing all steady state running, and then we stop that and we start doing all tempo or threshold work, and then we stop that and we do all VO2 max. Your total number of workouts as you move up in that order, your total number of workouts of that thing are less and less frequent. So meaning like when you're doing like all like recovery and easy, all of your workouts are obviously recovery and easy. And I would start that off with like maybe only 2 of them are even at an easy pace. And if you say you were running 5 days a week, 3 of them are going to be at a recovery pace. Yeah. If you were doing 4 days a week, I'd probably do maybe even 3 and 1, like 3 at recovery, 1, right? And then you could progress that and work it up to where you work yourself to 1 recovery and 3 easy, just as an example. And you could do that, like spend a ton of time there, because if we were to say like working our way through these exposures, you should spend months and months, if you're just getting into this, months and months and months and months on the easy stuff,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
And then when you go into steady state, it's like you might do steady state at most, maybe twice a week. I honestly felt best doing even that once a week.
Yeah.
But you could make the case for doing that twice a week, but say you're still running 5.
Depends on the duration of that training phase.
Yes.
So,
but, and that's what I'm getting at is like, we're talking about months and months of
Yeah.
like the easy. Once I went into say steady state, it's really going to be for 4 weeks, but not even really, because 3 of them were like specifically working on that. And then there was a recovery week where there wasn't any intensity in
Right.
that. So it would just be walking up the duration from week 1 to week 2, to week 3, and then going to a recovery week. So maybe spending 3 weeks on it like that, right? You have your recovery week, and let's say it was a 5-day a week running schedule. 1 to 2 of those, again, being recovery. The rest of them, being steady state. The rest of them, you're going to have at least 1 recovery run in there, and
Easy.
an easy run. And that easy run is probably going to be shorter, and then you're going to have a longer easy run, more than likely, right? And so just to recap before we go to the next one, months and months and months on the easy and recovery work to get ready for this, but then maybe a month of the steady state. Then we go to, and you could get away with doing it longer.
steady state for sure.
And it's like, if you're continuing to see improvement from it and you're not like getting your ass kicked by it, you keep going. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But just using that as an example, but you absolutely, that wouldn't be true by the time we get up to VO2 max intervals. I wouldn't be like, you could just keep doing these. Like, and I know there's people that say 1 high intensity session a week. I don't agree. And I have the receipts on like how quickly we can see adaptations from it.
Wait, so what do you mean?
There's people that will say like, do a VO2 max session every week. 1 session a week. Like Peter Thiel will say, VO2 max.
He's not doing true VO2 max.
I don't know. I
He's,
don't know what he's
from
doing,
what I
but-
understand from listening to him and from reading what he wrote, his work is at lactate threshold. It's not at
Okay.
VO2 max.
Okay. But so after steady state, we're going into tempo, and man, there's so many ways that you could do tempo. Like I've done straight tempo where you're doing, what is it, 8 to 20 minute sets, I think is what they say in the book.
Some people go up to, not them, but I've read, I don't know what they say in the book, but other people have
to
you go up to 30 minutes. Yeah.
So,
which is
I mean,
like a threshold
the
test.
test is, I was gonna say the test is at 30 minutes, but regardless, you could just do it where you're like easy running, 15-minute warm up, and then you go to say your 8 minutes in week 1, 8-minute intervals in week 1, 10-minute intervals in week 2, 12-minute intervals in week 3, and then you go to a recovery week, something like that. And obviously you have like your easy work on the back end, bringing it down. I forget the ratio of recovery on those, but it's not a crazy long recovery between them. It's not like it's 1-to-1 or anything.
No, it's like,
2 to,
oh God, no. I mean, I did 10-minute runs with 3-minute recovery.
it's 2-to-1.
Yeah.
So if you're
for
doing
their
an 8-minute
tempo?
interval, it would be a 4-minute recovery.
Yeah. And you don't have to recover for that long on those necessarily. So
But I literally went by the book and I did that. But so as an example, you could do it that way. And that's what I did in my training for the Georgia Death Race. When I was getting ready for Mountain Masochist, I wound up experimenting with mixing them into my long runs because, like, to me, and again, this is specific prep, that is so specific to a race.
right.
Because you're in the mountains, and it's like, even if you're just trying to power hike mountains, I mean, you've experienced this, like, you can power hike and get your heart rate up into the 170s.
Absolutely,
Easy.
you can. Easy to do it.
So I just looked at it and went like, even if I'm not necessarily doing a mountain run today, and I would do this in the mountains too, and I did as I got closer to the date, but I would go out and I would actually mix those into a 2-hour long run. So the 2-hour long run, I don't have it in front of me. I have all this on Threads. You can find my account on Threads and see it. I think it's still just at Chris Beyond Strength on Threads. But I would do like, say, 30 minutes easy, and then I would go to my first tempo interval of, say, 12 minutes, and then a 6-minute recovery, and then another 12 minutes, 6-minute recovery. And I forget if I think I just did 2 or 3. And then,
which is enough.
And then the rest of the session was easy after that. And I mean, you could experiment with that a lot of different ways. You could say, we're going to do that. Like, we're just going to do 12-minute on, 6-minute recovery, 12-minute on, easy for a really long time. And then later on, we're going to do another. There's different ways you could mix it in, is what I'm getting at. But I think if you were introducing someone to it, is just doing that. Like the easy work, do your intervals, do your recoveries, do your easy recovery, and done. But later on down the road, especially if you're getting ready for something specific, I really did like mixing those in. And I felt like that transferred to getting into the mountains and managing hills and stuff. And then VO2 max intervals. I hate them. That's all there is to say about them.
They suck.
That's the one thing that literally would create a level, and in a way this became kind of a superpower, but it created so much anxiety because, like, if you're really doing the work, it's just terrible. Like,
it's at the edge of your, it's at the edge of your capacity.
Yeah. And so I would get so incredibly, I would like put those workouts off. I'd be like, I do not want to do this. I should probably work on that. I should do this. And then I would go to the point where it's like, I have to be at something. We have to go now. And the reason why I would say I turn them into a superpower is because there's a difference of going through a phase of something and then later on telling yourself, like, this is what that was. So by the time I had myself so worked up to do VO2 max intervals in the Mountain Masochist train up, they were this monster that it became a superpower because I made it into a bigger monster than it ever was. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then when I did them, it was the most like invigorating feeling of like, oh, I pushed myself to the edge and that absolutely sucked, but it wasn't at all
as bad as you thought.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like, and then you walk away going like, okay, like I can do really hard stuff. And it's not like, I don't know, am I more developed than I was when I did that? But like, you just walk away going like, all right, bring it on. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And those are a 1-to-1 work to recovery. So say that you were doing a 3-minute interval, you would have a 3-minute recovery. So like the way that we're currently doing it in the gym is 15 minutes. Well, not in the gym, but anyone that's on like the higher level of the hybrid athlete track, 15 minutes easy. And then it's 3 minutes at an RP 9 to 10, 3-minute recovery, 5 times in week 1, 6 times in week 2, and then 4 times in week 3.
You're mean.
And then recovery. But, and with those, like the first time that I did them, I was walking the recoveries. And then the second exposure that I had to them, I immediately went to jogging. Like I didn't wait for my heart rate to drop to a certain level. I from like all out to like easy jog and like worked on managing my breathing, get my breath back, like would kind of walk through a number of things. I don't know. And then just like watching my heart rate and get back to, all right, I'm I would try to get back into like the 140s with still like a minute to go in that recovery. And then ideally be close to 130 before I start the next one. And then boom, here we go again. Did it always work? No, but it got, my ability to do that increased. I felt like when I walked them, sure, your heart rate comes way down, but there's also a way bigger shock going into that next.
Yeah. Well, I think at the very least, you need to, towards the end of your rest interval, start building your speed back up. So you're not like just trying to turn. Because first of all, like for lactate threshold intervals, a lot of times when I program them, I base it on heart rate.
Yeah.
So it's like the longer it takes you to get your heart rate up, the longer that interval is going to last because the time doesn't start until you hit the heart rate, you know? So,
and the other advantage to jogging your recoveries, and I think this is on my, where you say about me having all this camera gear and not doing anything with it. I also have a ton of footage. I do stuff with it. I have stuff filmed. I'm just kind of like, that's for me. I don't know. I don't post a lot of it. But it's for me. But
I just filmed it for me.
But it's funny because I'm talking about things and I'm documenting things. But in one of it might have been my final mountain run before I got sick, is I was just remarking on, as I was like running, there's like all these like switchbacks, and I was remarking on why I think that if you are walking all your recoveries from your intense running intervals, you're missing the mark. Because I mean, sure, on a long ultra race, like you're going to do some walking, but you don't want to train yourself that you have to walk all your recoveries, right? And I I just was remarking about how like I'm doing bursts up some of these hills, knowing like just being able to see ahead and be like, all right, there's a little bit of a flatter section coming up where I'm gonna kind of like power through this climb, and then I'm gonna be able to easy jog and power through, and the difference of feeling running my recoveries, like still easy running my recoveries, and when I walked my recoveries, I felt like it transferred to being able to go here, 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 as opposed to here, 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 here once you actually get in the mountains.
Yeah, that makes sense. Did you, this is a question I've been meaning to ask you. Did you have a RPE for the total race set for yourself? Like, I want to feel like I'm at this RPE.
Dude, no. Okay. Short answer, no. Longer answer, all throughout the race, yes. And meaning so speaking of the Georgia Death Race, like when we started, remember it was torrential downpour. It was dark. There were police, like, cause they had to reroute it. So we started off like leaving this park and being on a road, and there was like police that were blocking the road. So there's just like these bright flashing lights, picture the raindrops. It's just weird light, right? So arousal level is like 10,000. You're just like, all right, like we're about to go. It's 5:00 in the morning. And we just came out fast, like super fast. I wasn't expecting there to be a road run to start it. And so we were running very, very fast. I was with the front pack on that. And I was telling myself, we're going way too hard. But I was also like, it's raining. Like, let's not get stuck in the crowd back there. And I think we talked about that on the Georgia Death Race recap. But we ran down this road, and then you go over this bridge. It's like a little tiny bridge. And then it's like gravel. When we hit that gravel, it was just a little bit of a climb. And that's where I immediately was like, I wasn't necessarily thinking RPE, but I was thinking intensity. Same thing. Like, I was like, we're going way too hard for this early. Let some people pass you. And I just started brisk walking, and I'm listening to people passing and I'm like, that's fine. Like, I don't want to be there yet.
You shouldn't be there yet. Yeah.
And so like the main thing is I just kept all day. And I think in hindsight, obviously, I didn't know what I was in for. I've never run 74 miles, right? And so all day I was just like, take it, not easy, but take it easy. You know what I mean? In hindsight, I think there's times where I definitely could have gone harder. I didn't have a specific number in mind, but I kept reminding myself to, like, again, I wasn't thinking like I want to be at an RPE 7, but I just, if at any point I felt like I'm dying, I was like, let's be smart here. The only times where I was like going to where I would say it felt like VO2 max intervals, I don't remember what the different sections were called anymore, but there are some climbs that were like, yo, but that's where I felt like I could, and it's not a race. It's like, I heard someone say, you know, a marathon is a road race, but when you tell someone you did a marathon, no one says, did you win?
Oh, for sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
yeah. Because no one expects you to fucking win.
Same thing with an ultra. No one goes like, did you win? So you're not really racing others. So when I say this, like, but the reason why I would push really, really hard on the mountains is because I just realized that was the place where, like, one, I was pretty comfortable with being uncomfortable, but I also could go a lot faster. I don't know if that's like the strength training base or whatever. And that's where I would let myself go like very, very high heart rate and push very hard, because in my mind, it was like, this is where we can make up a lot of ground on people. Even though I'm not really racing them, there's just something about passing people. It's like, it's kind of fun.
No, for sure.
And then knowing that this hill can't go forever. There's one that felt like it did, but this hill can't go forever. And on the other side of this is either going to be flat or downhill. And I know that I can get back to a very low heart rate on either one of those. If you know how to spring down hills, you can bomb down mountains, as long as you don't try and put the brakes on too hard, and you can keep your heart rate very, very low. So I don't know, wrong, right, and different. Like, that was my approach, and I do think that worked out well. Just crush the uphills if you are confident in your ability to recover on the run in flat and downhill. So
yeah, for sure. No, I was just curious because I've read some people say about like have a general RPE or whatever it might be. I don't know.
Maybe I should have. I
don't
just
know.
had a time.
It's just a thought. It was something I've been meaning to ask you, and I just haven't asked you. So
I just had a time, and that's about all.
yeah. So I mean, you're pretty in tune with yourself. Like I think you have a good internal gauge of what something's costing you, and
Yeah.
you're not an idiot about that. And your ego isn't going to drive you to do really, really stupid shit because that's just not your personality. So,
But I think there's value in doing this before a race. I would never purposely want to do it because it's one of the worst feelings I've ever felt. But literally hitting a wall, bonking, like
oh, sure.
where you're just depleted, like to the point where like you are just shaking uncontrollably. You don't ever want to be there in a race. And I saw people there during a race. And the only thing I thought to myself, well, I guess I thought a lot of things, but one of the biggest things I thought to myself is like, did you not know? Like, and this is where I think you can get in trouble with steady state. Because I remember when it happened, I was like, oh my.
You were doing a steady state run?
It was a steady state. It was supposed to be,
Because
it was supposed to be 4 hours. No. I wasn't doing a steady state run. No, hang on. It was a long run, an endurance run.
what was your heart rate?
4 hour. Hang on. 4 hour. And I was feeling really good. And on this day, I was like, I'm okay with my heart rate getting a little bit higher because I had just done a steady state block. And I was like, dude, if I can do steady states and go out and hold for, that last week was like the 1x40, because I pretty much just kept those whenever I carried them forward into the Mountain Mascus. So I did that 1x40 and I'm like, dude, I'm able to hold at 40 minutes. I don't feel beat up afterwards. I didn't at all think about the energy demands of that. Zero thought of that. I was just like, I know I could have held that in my mind, I'm like, I could have held that for hours, right? And so that's what I did. I went out on that week's long run. It's supposed to be a 4-hour long run. And I did that. Hour 1, fantastic. And I'm looking at my time and I'm like, oh, I'm going to run. It wasn't as fast as my steady state, but point being, it was faster than what it should have been for an easy run. And so I was like, oh, I'm going to run over a marathon in 4 hours today. I'm like, that's pretty cool. And so hour 1, I'm ahead of pace to complete a marathon in 4 hours. Hour 2, I'm ahead of pace at 2.5 hours, which is also like, that's cool that I could push like that for 2.5 hours. At the 2.5 hour mark, I was like, ooh, like
You ran out of carbs, sweetie.
first it was like, man, my heart rate's starting to get high and I'm not really pushing any harder. And then I started to feel like I should slow down. And then I thought about pizza. I was like, I should order, after when I'm done with this workout, I'm gonna order a pizza. And then it went to, I'm gonna stop. And I sat down on a rock. I was like, I should order pizza right here. I wonder if I can get a pizza delivered to this park. And then within seconds, this uncontrollable shaking kicked in. It's the worst feeling in the entire world. And when I talked to my coach afterwards, what's funny is it was supposed to be a 4-hour workout. So that all started at the 2.5 hour mark. And it was the reason why I sat down is at the 3 hour mark, my watch plays this little chime and it's like workout complete. And I was like, no, it's not. This is it was literally titled 4-hour endurance run. And like, but the watch says I'm done. And that's when I sat down and started shaking uncontrollably. And my coach titled the workout correctly, but he accidentally left the actual workout in Training Peaks as 3 hours. 3 hours. Titled it 4, but wrote it as 3 in there. So I was just like, well, that's good because I am done. I can't get back up. And I sat there and I tried to recover. And it's like luckily it was just at Algonquian
Park.
whatever the name of the Potomac
complex.
Sportsplex, the baseball complex. I was sitting at a rock, like right in the outfield of one of the fields. And I eventually was like, well, I got to get home. And I got up and I very, very shakily walked home and crushed a lot of food. And then when I talked to my coach, I was like, number one, you'll see I did not do 4 hours. But in my defense, the watch said the workout was complete. So I think there was a problem. And he was like, you're the second person to say that today. And he's like, crap, these were entered incorrectly. Like copy and pasted the 3 hour one from a previous time, put it in 4, but then forgot to actually go change it. So I'm like, well, that's cool because then we talked about, I'm like, but I don't know what happened. I'm like, because I felt so good. And then he looked at it. He was like, it's because you did a steady state run for 3 hours.
Yeah.
So, but that's where like, you got to be careful when you're doing these different types of runs and really be honest with yourself about RPE and or heart rate and just do what you're supposed to do, because that's what happened. I didn't do what I was supposed to do. But the good thing is I found out, I learned, and I think I know that was in my head for the Georgia Death Race is I'm like, dude, that happened in roughly 2.5 hours. I'm going to be out there. My goal is to do this in under 20. That's such a strong possibility. And that, again, it wasn't a specific RPE, but it was just like, do not bonk, do not bonk, do not bonk. You know what I mean? And so when I saw people that are like where I was sitting on that rock, but at, whatever it was, 40, 50 some miles in. And in some ways I'm like, how? That's where I'm like, did you not know? It's like,
well, I think there's a couple things. I think sometimes people don't practice the things that they should.
yeah,
I think another thing is people don't, and then this is all conjecture, of course, people don't manage their emotions well. And I think sometimes people, like, instead of having a plan and deciding this is what I'm going to do and not being stupid, they let their emotions get the best of them and they do things that they shouldn't do and they push themselves too hard. And then the third thing is like, I just think some people don't necessarily recognize the signs, and that would be a good thing for people to understand. It's like, if your heart rate changes, it means that you're shifting fuel sources.
Yeah.
And if you shift fuel sources from fat to carbs, primarily fat to primarily carbs, you don't have much time left.
Yeah.
So you need to slow down.
There's only so long you can hold. It's like, I think in the science of running, Steve Magnus says that a threshold is your half marathon pace.
Makes sense.
So, which I'm like, for me specifically,
your heart rate didn't get that high when we ran the half marathon, did it?
I don't know. I'd have to go and look at the data. What I was going to say is, well, that's the observation I was about to make. I was going to say, for me specifically, I don't know because I didn't train for that half marathon. So I put myself in a different.
Well, that's the thing is, like, all I did was easy runs to run the half marathon.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
But yeah, I don't know.
But anyway,
Makes sense.
Yeah.
It'd be faster. You would run a half marathon faster than a steady state, but you definitely wouldn't run it. So it makes sense.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I think we've probably done what we needed to do.
That was a long one.
It was long. It's time to go.
Longest one.
Okay.
We've ever done. All right.
Is it longest we've ever done?
I think so. Hour
no shit.
hour 22 if that timer's correct.
Badass. All right, we're done.